all, Richard Wingrove. Evening, Richard. Jester, hi all. Also looking forward to tonight's drams. Haven't had a whiskey in around 24 hours. That is just unacceptable, Jester. Well, we'll be rectifying that tonight. Richard Wingrove, I have a whiskey tasting tonight and a beer tasting tomorrow, so I have to behave myself over the weekend. Absolutely. Neil Bolton, evening all. Ready for some drams. Right, guys, as you can see, it's just me today. So if you've never watched Pour and Sip or you're new and this is your first live tasting, welcome. My name's Andy. I'm the usual co-host here at Pour and Sip with Jess, who currently unfortunately can't be with us tonight. So you've just got me. I am really sorry about that, everybody. So if you're new to Pour and Sip, welcome to one of our live tastings. Tonight we've got an awesome lineup for you guys. We've got 3 guests from 3 of the whiskies we're trying tonight. We've got Nick from Glen Scotia, Chico from the Oxford Artisan Distillery, and we've got Brendan from Ledaig. I think I said that right, possibly. I'm getting a round of applause. Yes, I did. Sweet. Okay, cool. And then I'll be doing a really quick whistle-stop tour of the last 2 whiskies from Glasgow 1770 and Yellowstone tonight. So that's the order of proceedings. If you are new here, please get involved with all your tasting notes, your comments. Please ask questions to our guests. That's what they're here for, and we're trying these whiskies together. So please get involved. No question is too silly. No tasting note is too silly. We just love hearing what you guys have to say. So a few more. Malcolm Tucker, what's the running order? I will double go over this again for anyone who wasn't listening. So we're going to start with Glen Scotia, and then we are going to head to the Oxford Artisan Distillery. Then we're going to go to Ledaig, and then a really quick whistle-stop tour of the Glasgow and the Bourbon, the Yellowstone. Evening all. So Green Tea is Green, reporting for duty. Hello, Green Tea is Green, and welcome, Peter Gilmore. Evening, everybody. Now, I think we should just start, because usually this is a conversation between myself and Jess, but you know, can't really have a conversation with myself. So I'm going to welcome Nick onto the screen from Glen Scotia. Hello, Nick.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great, thanks. Doing great. Looking forward to this. It's a nice excuse to have a dram on a Thursday.
Absolutely. Any excuse. Where are we talking to you from tonight?
So I'm based in Edinburgh. Obviously, Glen Scotia is not from Edinburgh. It's from Campbelltown in far west Scotland, on the Kintyre Peninsula. But I live in Edinburgh with my family here, and go over to Campbelltown as regularly as I can.
Don't blame you. So for anyone who's not met you before and you've never done Pour and Sip, just let us know a bit about yourself, how you got yourself into the whiskey industry and found yourself in your current role for Glen Scotia as brand manager.
Yeah, sure. So before Glen Scotia, I was working for Adnams on their as head of marketing for their beer and gin brands, which was good fun. But sort of whiskey was always kind of the crown jewels, if you like, and what I really wanted to work on and get more immersed in. So we came up to Scotland. I decided this is the space I want to be in now. So luckily the job for Glen Scotia came along. Glen Scotia is owned by Loch Lomond Group. They also own Loch Lomond Whiskies. They own Little Mill, what casks remain of that as well, and a few other brands, including Ben Lemon Gin. So yeah, the role came up for Glen Scotia, and I was like, absolutely, have at it. It's one of those kind of best kept secrets that was becoming less and less of a kept secret. It was getting more and more of a sort of global recognition. It was just one of those brands I've tried and loved. I'm like, yeah, a job of that, yes, please. So I've been with the brand about 2 years now and just been absolutely loving it from start to finish. There's great stuff coming out of the distillery. We've got a fantastic master distiller in Ian McAllister. He's just probably I would argue, the biggest gentleman you can ever meet in whiskey. He's just such a warm personality and so passionate, and he's Campbelltown born and bred. So he's just the real deal. So yeah, it's been having an absolute ball with it, really. And we've done some wonderful releases in that time as well. Obviously, I'm biased because I get to work on them, but the one we've got tonight, especially, I've had just the best fun with. So looking forward to pouring some out and seeing what the response is.
Yeah, we'll look forward to trying that one. So you mentioned a couple of times about Campbelltown. Now, talk to us a bit about Campbelltown, because that used to be a major hub for whiskey distilleries, but now there's only 3. So kind of what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are kind of less familiar with it, apologies to those who are, but so Campbelltown's the 5th official Scotch whisky producing region. You've got your Highlands, you've got your Speysides. Campbelltown's definitely the smallest. But once upon a time, it was most certainly one of the most important. So it used to be known as the Victorian whiskey capital of the world. I think at its height, and don't quote me on this, we had something like 27 distilleries operating at one time. But we're talking about a fairly tiny town, with something like 9,000 people in it. So when you go to Campbelltown, you can see the remnants of all these distilleries. There's basically one on every blooming corner, and they might be used for different things now. But you see this kind of, this kind of fallen empire of distilleries. So it was a real boom. I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I've certainly been told that once upon a time, wherever you were in the world, if you were drinking a whiskey, chances are you were drinking a Campbelltown whiskey, or at the very least passed through, because it was such a fortuitous position for trade routes. That changed, and there's various kind of theories on why. The truth is, it's probably a combination of them, but things like the railroad made it easier for people to kind of get whiskey about the place. So suddenly, if you know your Scottish geography, coming down the Clyde and pass through Campbelltown became less of a necessity. Challenges on kind of raw materials puts a lot of the local distilleries out of business. Some say the style kind of fell out of favour for blending. I mean, if you, as we'll see tonight, I mean, Campbelltown whiskies, they're quite distinct in a way. And if you're looking to produce sort of, a light blended whiskey, it's not the first one you go to, certainly. It's got much more of a, we like to say kind of a mucky quality to it. And we love that. It's that kind of, it's that rich oiliness about it. It's that viscosity, which is great for single malts, probably less well for blending. So those combinations meant a lot of distilleries fell away. You had, 27 at its peak. There's 3 today. You've got Springbank, who flew the flag for Campbelltown for the longest time and did a very good job. So we tip our hats to them always. They very cleverly, and we're very grateful, opened another distillery, which is Kilkerran and Glengyle. To basically, you need 3 distilleries to have an official region. So they basically kept the status, if you like, by opening a 3rd distillery. And did very well. And Springbank is one of those ones that's kind of had a proper longevity for it. Glen Scotia's history is probably a little bit more checkered, shall we say. It's had, I don't know if I have enough fingers on my hands to count how many owners it's had over its history. And it's come and gone. It's been used for kind of blends, etc. But then you kind of get into this latest chapter of its ownership, which is probably about 1999 onwards, really. And then ownership taken over from Loch Lomond Group in something like, I want to say, 2014, and that's just been it's like somebody's put a rocket up it. I think the team that went in there, including Ian and his team, just really pulled it up by the bootstraps. The quality and the consistency became much better, without plugging it too hard, because that's not what we're here to do. It's become award winning, so we're tremendously proud of it. So it's just like seeing this really kind of get its confidence back after all that time, and that's been sort of wonderful to witness.
Yeah, I mean, best 25 that got voted is the best whiskey in the world, wasn't it, at the San Francisco Whiskey Awards?
Yeah, you're going to make me blush, but yeah, we the 25-year-old took home best in class, best in show at the World Spirits Competition in 2021, and then we were very, very honoured to get named Distillery of the Year 7 months later. It's the first time the distillery's been named both in the same year, well, at all, let alone in the same year. So that's been great, and it's just. For us, it's lovely to sort of get the endorsement for Glen Scotia, but it's just wonderful to see the world starting to embrace that style of Campbelltown whiskies again. Sort of putting it back on the map.
So talk to us a little bit about that kind of that Campbelltown style, but also the House Glen Scotia style, and what we can expect from a Glen Scotia whiskey, and what are the productions?
Absolutely. So we typically we only produce peated whiskey for about 6 weeks of the year. So if you for our limited editions, for our festivals, etc., we might launch something sort of peaty heavier, a bit kind of more mucky. But typically Glen Scotia for me, I mean, if I'm thinking kind of like core range, if you like, what would I kind of expect? You'd always get that sort of rich oiliness that sort of coats the palate and just makes it a very, very sort of satisfying mouthfeel. Number one, we are right by the sea, so there is a slight salinity to all of our malts, but it's subtle. It's like a little salty bite in the background. It's not a heavily savoury whiskey. On the nose for me, and I'm about to pour myself a drink, I'm talking myself into it. On the nose for me, I always, almost unfailingly, get that kind of Atlantic sea breeze characteristic. And really keen to know kind of what other people are getting on the nose as well.
Yeah,
but I always get that.
There's a few comments coming in about already. There's actually quite a few, so I've missed this all here. So Ali sees evening, or I'm doing a Campbelltown warm up with a Springbank 10. Very good choice. So Peter Gilmore, sherry and orange to the nose, a sweet smell. Neil Bolton, loving the warm up concept. Ivy Yamazaki. Stuart Pilling is saying he met Ian McAllister at the Southport Whisky Festival a few weeks ago, did a masterclass, which was really informative. Green tea is green. The Glen Scotia is a nice, whiskey nose. Okay. Slight bit of dark chocolate, so I'm happy. Steve Coleman Williams, apple, fresh pepper, and maybe some strong blue cheese hints on the nose. Simon, he had no idea to the distilleries were Springbank yet, so he loves the Campbelltown Drowns. Such a shame the number has shrunk so much. We're definitely getting quality over quantity in Campbelltown for sure. Simon, apple and almost a waxy nose. Jester getting licorice, all sorts on the nose, the ones with the pink ounces. Clive Hampton, the nose is quite restrained and delicate, but the first taste is like a spice explosion, which I didn't expect. One to take time over if I can. Your Uncle Banyo, no, the only time I'm late, and we start with the best dram, sad face. So Nick, talk to us just a bit about this dram in general. So this is a 12-year-old seasonal release for this year.
It is, yeah. So we launched, we sort of like to do one of these around that kind of, October run up to Christmas time every year. And it's just our own kind of little toast to the Campbelltown community, if you like. I mean, that community really is kind of why we've survived. They've been through us through thick and thin. And we sort of launched this as a dram to be sort of shared in good company with good food, basically, knowing what the season holds. So that tends to mean we want to take a sort of a sherry finish to it, and we've been sort of playing with those. But for this one, it's quite exciting. So for the 12-year-old seasonal release this year, it's had an Amontillado sherry finish on it. So most of its life in first of all bourbon, and then the last 12 months in Amontillado sherry casks. And what's quite nice about that for me, and again, don't let me bias you, it's your own notes. But when I think sort of, I quite like a sort of a perfumed Oloroso finish, or I like the kind of the sort of sticky sweetness of a PX. An Amontillado sherry finish tends to be slightly drier, and you get a kind of a nutty kind of characteristic with it that's really quite satisfying. So for me on the nose, I get a slight kind of linseed kind of quality, but then sort of heaps that kind of caramel that I'm sort of used to getting from Glen Scotia and from those bourbon barrels.
Yeah, it's that for me. It's like kind of orange peel, but also these kind of caramelized, nutty kinds of notes that kind of that are coming through. And it's interesting to see Amontillado casks because it's not often you see them as finishes. But I'm really interested with that label as well. It's different to the recent Glen Scotia labels.
It is, yeah. I mean, even the box as well. We kind of, we took our kind of Campbelltown cross, which is a bit of a pillar of the community, and popped that on there. As I say, it was all just about a toast to the the community that kept us going, really. But
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. Neil Bolton here saying slightly charred treacle toffee on the nose. Malcolm Tucker nose, sweet with toasted nuts and a spice. It was like you were saying about the Amontillado cask, giving it that more nutty kind of quality than you would with the Oloroso, where you'd get a much more kind of perfume, kind of sticky dates from a PX cask. Real Boingo, glazed orange peel and butterscotch on the nose. Alex Antonio now getting some yeast bread dough starter type nose too. Lots of tasting notes coming in now. Steve Coleman Williams, almost spiced apricot, but not sure that's a thing. P. Barrett, that's a lovely dram, very complex and full of flavour. The sweetness is a real surprise. So they've all pushed ahead straight onto the tastings. Me and you haven't got there, Nick. So
no, that's grand. Love it. Yeah. What else to say? Yeah, natural colour, which I adore. I'm a big fan of going natural colour when we can. Cask strength. And again, you can sort of, if you give it a good roll around the glass, you can start to see some of that oiliness I was referring to kind of coming through. Which I just find a delight. I can look at it all day. I really could.
See those legs really sticking to the side. You can't pick that up at all on the screen, unfortunately.
Yes.
Like yourself at home, you will definitely be able to see those lovely long legs kind of sticking to the glass. The unfortunate first thing I have to say is I have a stinking cold. So that's slightly askew.
Hopefully this will fix it.
Yes, exactly. It's a real drying quality for me as well. And that orange note is really coming through on the palate.
Totally, yeah. Totally. I mean, what I get, which I love. I mean, number one, it's about, I think, 53.3% ABV. And yet, it doesn't feel too sort of punchy. It's all kind of quite harmonious. And yet you do get some of that kind of lovely kind of, cinnamon, nutmeg, A slight woodiness to it as well that I really like on the palate.
Yes, a really nice gingery, candied kind of ginger finish as
Absolutely.
well. Ginger spice as well that's going on the back end of the palate. Green tea is green, getting a bit more spice and cooked fruit on the nose now. Real boing. It starts with butterscotch taste and explosions of peppers follow. Simon Sultana's caramel on the palate. That signature salinity hint. Amazing Glen Scotia mouthfeel. Love this. Neil Bolton, very spicy finish. Real boing and settles into a vanilla caramel finish. Richard Wingrove getting a peppery end to go with the sweetness and fruitiness for me. So,
love that. Yeah, love that. I was going to ask you, is anyone sort of picking up that sort of slight salinity we referenced? Clearly one of us is, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely there. It's not like I don't think it's like you're saying. It's like a subtle salinity. It's definitely not an overpowering one on this at all for me. But it's a really nice kind of sea spray kind of note that is just kind of there.
Definitely.
Which is really nice. So, yeah, I mean, with this one, so how many bottles have been made of this one?
Oh, you're testing me now. I want to say, don't quote me on it. I think it's about 15,000 bottles, but I might have just completely made that up. So let me check and come back to you on it. But yeah, I think it's like 15,000 globally.
But it's a pretty big release, so we won't. And remember, guys, that if you do go to the Pour and Sip store, you are going to get discount on this. So please head over there, and we will be able to get this bottle should you like this one. Malcolm Tucker, some oak, sherried raisins moving into warming candied ginger. Why is Amontillado not often used really as a finish? I mean, it is. I actually tried a Ledaig, for God's sake, which was a finish in the Amontillado cask. But we don't often see it.
I think so. We did a really nice bit of work with this with a partner. Basically, we like to kind of, because of the food angle, we like to sort of get some chefs involved and sort of get their take on and what they do with it. So because of the Amontillado finish, we partnered with London's first sherry bar, which is called Bar Pepito. And it's a really nice guy there called Richard Bigg, who's founded it, who just lives and breathes sherry and is, over to kind of Jerez and the Sherry Triangle as often as he kind of can be. I was chatting to him about the same questions, like, Amontillado, I just don't come across it that often, whiskey world or otherwise. What's the go? He said, look, it's and my detail on this isn't great, but it's a biologically created sherry, basically. So there isn't a heap of it about anyway. You'll find much more some of the other variants. And then in terms of kind of its interaction with the whiskey, it's quite a sort of distinct flavor. Whereas I kind of feel, there'll be people on here more knowledgeable than me that might disagree, but there's a slight versatility to sort of Oloroso, for example, or you can put a heavy PX finish on something, or Oloroso can interplay with something a bit lighter. Amontillado, I kind of find is more of a, it's a selective choice. You choose when to sort of bring that one out. Would be my take. There's probably a few whiskey buffs on this chat right now, like that's nonsense. But
possibly a question as well for our other guests. You mentioned about the food that they wanted this to go through. Is there anything in particular you pair this with? Because that is a question that often is asked by our Pour and Sip.
Yeah, absolutely. So it certainly isn't your standard Christmas fare, but again, because of the sherry connection, it was an Andalusian chef that works at Bar Pepito called Nacho de Cambo. And the pairing seed absolutely blew my mind. But for him, he was bringing out, quite honestly, it was cured meats. We poured things like the whiskey over salted olives, and it worked really well. He was using it in a chicken satay sauce and pairing it alongside that, which was great. We had octopus with it. And what was lovely is, you put something like, these aren't exactly things you pick up from the co-op, I know, but you put octopus with this, and suddenly, the saltiness of that kind of kicks back the saltiness of the dram, and some of that sweetness kind of comes to the forefront. Or when we were sort of pairing it with things like dark chocolate or like a dark chocolate mousse, obviously the sweetness was kind of contrasted and kicked back, and suddenly a lot of that kind of those subtle maritime nuances came to the front. So really what I loved about kind of those pairings he was doing with it was you just, because there's so many different layers to this dram, the ability to sort of pull them apart and pull some to the forefront and then push some back again was just great. So we had just the best time with him playing with this dram and playing with his dishes, really. But it was all real kind of Andalusian affair, which was really nice. So fundamentally, if you're going to pair it with anything, actually tapas and good company is probably the way to go.
Okay, that does sound absolutely amazing, I have to say, especially over the salted olives. That sounds absolutely wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Nick, about this particular dram. It's absolutely wonderful.
Thanks for having me on.
And thanks for coming on. I hope we can have Glen Scotia back. We have had a Glen Scotia on here before, but I would like many more, to be honest.
Absolutely.
So,
always happy to join if we can. That'd be fantastic.
And get those kids to sleep.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm jealous of the rest of the lineup. It sounds absolutely brilliant. So I'll watch it afterwards. But yeah, thank you. I'll go get the kids down now. Now there's a dram in hand.
Yes, exactly. Cheers, Nick. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yeah, Neil Bolton saying, cool backdrop, by the way. Whiskey on the shelf and what looks like a surfboard. So there you go. Whiskey and surfing. That's the one. Well, what a great start to the evening. I have to say, I absolutely loved that dram. Cold withstanding. So yes, lovely to hear that you guys enjoyed that one as well. So I'm going to welcome on our next guest, Chico from the Oxford Artisan Distillery, to discuss and talk to us about the whiskey we'll be trying tonight. Hello, Chico. How are you?
Hey, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, man. Where are we talking to you from?
Well, obviously, I'm in Oxford at the moment. I'm currently in the distillery, so if you hear some noises, it's just Ed, one of our distillers, cleaning a mash tun. But that's all good. That's all good.
That's authentic. That's what we want to hear. We're not filtering in these sounds. This is just generally happening with in the background. That's lovely to hear.
Well, I'm quite jealous of you that you're trying. You got to try that Glen Scotia. It was sounding amazingly delicious.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful. I love Campbelltown whiskies, I have to say, in general. And luckily, Nick is still there, but I can't say it. Springbank really is one of my favourite all-time distilleries, so I just love Campbelltown as a
yeah, me too. There was like actually a few years ago, I stayed pretty much all night just to be able to get some bottles of Long Grow Red and some Springbank 12.
It's getting a bit much, I have to say. It is getting absolutely absurd how difficult it is to get hold of these bottles. But anyway, we're not here to discuss Springbank. We're here to discuss where you are, the Oxford Artisan Distillery. But first, talk to us a bit about yourself, how you got into whiskey and found yourself in your current position for the distillery.
Yeah, so I come from Portugal, and all my life I was raised in the middle of casks and grapes. In my family's winery, and when I went to school to university to study wine, I just started to brew beer at home. Got a part-time job as a brewer, and then I found myself in studying both at the same time in food science until I started to actually produce some wine myself. But as a kind of a hobby, I started kind of like a microbrewery in my garage, like that classic cliche about anyone getting into brewing. Until I decided to go to Scotland to take it more seriously. So when I went to Edinburgh to get my master's in brewing and distilling, I just fell in love with whiskey and all the flavors that I could work with. And in some ways, it was kind of a therapy to me as well, because because I have to wait a lot to actually produce like a whiskey, to mature it. Not only mature it, but it's also the distillation time as well. So it's kind of a therapy for patients to me. And I mean, became a distiller since then. So I did my project with my final project in the degree with the Oxford Artisan Distillery. That's how I met these guys. They were just starting back then, so I was employee number 2. Charlie, that worked for Muscle of Mud, was employee number 1. But I took over the distillation from him. And yeah, so I've been here since the beginning, 5 to 6 years now. I've been in and out in other ventures just to see and experience different cultures and do some roots. But I always end up coming here because I just truly love these projects and I cannot get away from it.
That's awesome to hear a lot of people saying in the comments that they love this story. But talk to us then about the project, the Oxford Artisan. For anyone who doesn't know anything about the Oxford Artisan Distillery, talk to us about it, its roots, how it came about, and a brief history.
Yeah. So I mean, we are just a tiny distillery in Oxford city centre, pretty much, but we like to see ourselves as farmers as well. So we farm all our grain, and we farm it in the most natural way possible. So we started growing Asian varieties of grain from our archaeobotanist John, that he has been collecting over the past 30 years from several seed banks in the world, and understanding how they best grow. And it turns out that they best grow with just no intervention, no chemicals, and they grow better when they are all mixed together. So we just grow a bunch of different grains: rye, wheat, barley, einkorn, emmer, spelt, oats. Some very mixed in the field, so wheat and barley growing together, or rye and wheat growing together, all around Oxford. And I see our job here in the distillery as translating those grains in a bottle, in a liquid. I mean, grain might go off as grain, as bread, as a beer after a few years, but with whiskey, it can just stay like that forever, and probably even gets better. So we like to interpret the flavor of the grains, and pack as much flavor from them in the bottle. With this, we do quite a non-traditional style of production compared with a lot of distilleries in UK. So we keep the grain in the fermentation, and also the grain goes into the still to be distilled, a bit more kind of like American style. But for us, that means, sorry?
The stills at the distillery are really interesting. That might be something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the stills are quite quirky, like with this Victorian steampunk look, and they were built by people that never built stills before. So they were built by the last steam train manufacturers in UK, down in South Devon. And I mean, it's they were drawn in a like a piece of napkin in a pub after a few pints. They have pretty much no welds, just more than 1,000 rivets. And the first time that they arrived to the studio, that they came all packed, and I mean, of course, there was no instructions. So it was just like, well, shall we just like put it over there? Yeah, let's go. And then when we fired them for the first time, they were just leaking everywhere. Just like, and I was like, so one of the guys that South Devon is like, hey guys, the distiller is just leaking everywhere. It's like, yeah, I mean, steam trains do leak. Yeah, but this is alcohol, not water. But yeah, so with a lot of hammering and also a lot of moonshine dough that we used to do every morning, we got it. We got somewhere that we are happy about them. But yeah, they do contribute a lot with the flavor of the whiskey that we are trying today, and we are really proud of them.
That's great. And I mean, you were talking about farming as well, and the most important thing, talking about the grains. How important is sustainability to you guys?
Well, sustainability for us is everything. I mean, this is not proven to our method, but we can. I mean, as we don't touch the soil, we don't disturb any plants. It's part of the grain that we cut it every year, of course. Poor grains, but we like to promote the ecosystem in the field. So in some ways, we are restoring the biodiversity in the fields, and also mainly restoring the biodiversity in the soil as well, which is really important. So we just grow grain year after year, non-stop, and we just see the yields increasing as the land replenished itself and absorbs more and more nitrogen, fixes more, and also more carbon, more organic material. And when it comes to this study, we like to be as sustainable as possible as well. And we are doing a lot of work to I mean, our goal is to be the most sustainable distillery in the world one day. So hopefully get that.
That's the ambition. That is the ambition. There's loads of notes coming in about this one now, so I do want to get to those, but we should just talk about what we're tasting here tonight. And you talk to us through, because I mean, the Oxford Artisan Distillery rye whiskey, purple grain. Talk to us about what this all means, the heritage grains, what we're talking about here. What are we drinking?
So we're drinking one of our first distilled whiskies ever. This was a special release for our 5th anniversary last summer, and it's quite high rye strength. But the uniqueness of the mash bill here is that the rye grew together with wheat, and the common name for that mixture in the field is maslin. It comes from the Latin muesli mixture. So 70% rye, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley, where the rye and wheat were going together. Was double distilled, both in our two stills, and then spent a few years in American oak, and then another year and a few months in the purple muscatel casks. So purple muscatel is something that some people are aware of. Purple muscatel is a rare grape variety that got almost extinct with phylloxera back in the day, and there has been a huge effort from winemakers in Setúbal wine region, 1 hour south of Lisbon in Portugal, to revive this muscatel variety. And purple muscatel is literally what muscatel wine we know nowadays, but on steroids. It's just like packed with like full of like violet flower character and apricots, peach. I mean, it's so delicious. If you didn't try it, it's a must. It's a must. Yeah.
I have to say, I don't think I've ever tried. I mean, I've tried muscatel, but not purple muscatel as it's called. I've never tried it. So, what like I said, it's like muscatel times 11, amplified to 11. Just
Exactly. Yeah, so sweet fortified wine, but super refreshing as well. So it's perfect for like an aperitif or digestive in summer, and it really expressed quite well in this whiskey. But what I love about these whiskeys and what I love about our grains is that they are so packed with flavor, and they are so diverse in flavor as well as they are diverse with their genetics, as there's like hundreds of varieties growing in the same field. That the whiskey really shaped the flavor profile in different ways, and what we can find in these whiskeys a lot of like our grain character as pastry notes, like a bit of pão raisins, with the muscatel, just giving this kind of like raisin stone fruit character to it. It's very kind of nutty and chocolatey, a bit like cantuccini vibe. I mean, it's floral as well. Our grains can be quite floral as well, but I think there's a really nice marriage between both cask maturation and the grains, and it's super herbal as well. A lot of fresh herbs coming through from the rye mainly, and I mean, in the mouth develops beautifully. It's like quite oily, quite thick, spicy, peppery. I mean, it's a huge ram. I love it. I mean, it's cask strength as well, 53.6.
Yeah.
We're quite surprised because it dropped a lot, the ABV in these casks. But yeah, I mean, as you add some water, it also opens up, and the mouthfeel just coats your mouth totally differently as well.
Okay, so yeah, I've got a couple of people asking that question about water with this one. But I'm just going to read out a few of the tasting notes because there's quite a lot of notes that are coming through about this particular dram. Your Uncle Vanya, wow, that's interesting. I'm loving this. Richard Wingrove had never heard of purple muscatel before, but I do like the one muscatel cask from the lakes, I'm assuming you're talking about. So hoping for good things from this one. Peter Gilmore, a hint of nuts and popcorn. Real boing. I get dried fruits with ginger and cinnamon with citrus on the nose. Pat Cowling, slightly burnt bread pudding with sultana and butter. Jeff says, this is an amazing nose. Getting nettles. I've never heard that before. So nettles is a great note. Tobacco and nougat. Steve Compton Williams, much more savoury on the nose and earthy. Struggling to place specifics, though. Neil Bolton, raisins, Christmas pudding on the nose. Peter Gilmore also saying buttery as well. Green tea is green. It's a fine nose, deep, rich fruit cake, lots of fruit. Christmas cake as well. Richard Wingrove getting toasted raisins from the outside, like a dark fruit cake. Clive Hampton, a really big red berry nose and black pepper and a beautiful colour. Steve Cullen Williams talking about Edinburgh ideas. Neil Bolton, like this probably sometimes is the man. That is a flavour bomb, and that's what you're talking about. The absolute explosion of flavour on this one, probably coming from that purple muscatel wine casks. Malcolm Tucker nose reminds me of walking through long grass, and you were saying about the herby kind of notes, and maybe that is as well what people are getting from that. Neil Bolton, bonkers on the palate. I like it. Well, let's move to the palate quickly. So we were talking about the nose, and a lot of people getting those kind of juicy red berry notes on the nose, and these kinds of the popcorn notes. People said a bit of a nutty note. Plums became a comment as well. So let's have a sip of this one.
Cheers.
You're well ahead of me, Chica, because I'm doing all the talking.
Yeah, no, I mean this the palate here is just astonishing. I mean, it's so mouth coating, and I mean you can feel the heat in the back, but still like all this sweetness, this caramel from the grains. Our grains are really sweet when they are distilled. I mean, if you try our vodka one day, it's just like a sweet bomb, and it's just a vodka. And then I mean all this herbalness, this peppery notes just blend so nicely with the fruity character. I mean, we have to remember this whiskey was launched in summer, and was to be kind of like a summery whiskey, although it's so packed with flavor that it might be quite heavy for a hot day. I mean, I will challenge you to make some highballs with it as well. Just like,
I'd say a really refreshing highball in the sun would be wonderful.
yeah, but also in winter, especially now in February, I mean, it's one of the best old fashions I ever tried in my life, and I'll challenge Brandon from Tobermory to do an old fashioned with this. It is famous old fashioned sessions.
I think Brendan made a old fashioned with us on Pour and Sip live once, unless I'm wrong. I think so, or gave us a good recipe about an old fashioned Brendan style. So that was good, and I can imagine that this would also make a very good old fashioned. Yeah. Neil Bond's saying this is bonkers on the palate. I like it. Steve Coleman Williams, wow, lots of plum, orange, Jaffa. Yeah, definitely got that Jaffa cake note. A hint of white chocolate sweetness, beautiful. Green tea is green, a slightly sweet edge to the taste, almost a dessert whiskey. So that note you were talking about the purple muscatel nose, wine, fortified wine, really coming through here on the palate for people. Jeff, so the palate is very sort of antiseptic, sweet Parma violets. On the first sip, the fumes went up my nose, very strange, and a long peppery finish on the lips. Alex Antonio, that brioche pan au chocolat type flavor too. That's what you were saying, Chico, about that real the
pastry. A lot of pastry, yeah. So with our process, we like the grain to shine through it. So after mashing the grain, we allow it to start natural spontaneous fermentation. So it develops there's a lot of like wild yeast and bacteria kicking in before we add our own yeast culture. So a lot of creaminess, lactic vibes going on with the grain. And in the stills, the way the stills are designed, and also the distillation profile, we like to approach quite a full body, savory kind of liquid as well. So a lot of like minerality going on, exploring this herbal, peppery character, and with a lot of depth and with all the sweetness from the grains. I mean, usually it gets really like butterscotchy, and as it evolves in the cask, usually it gets like more pastry, like really, really nutty as well. And this is across any single cask type we are experimenting with, which I mean, a lot of American oak, a lot of used casks, and every single wine cask you can imagine.
I was about to say, so on that note, is there any exciting release coming up from you guys after this one that you can divulge us in, or is there anything that is particularly taking your fancy about a cask finish that you've got going on?
I'm a huge fan of our latest release, which was our Tawny Pipe release for Christmas. We still have a few bottles, and it's again cask strength. Was a special favor from a friend winemaker from Douro Valley. Got like this super old port pipe with I mean, that had like Tawny with a few decades on top, and it just like evolved beautifully. I mean, the mint character paired with the depth of this pastry, the chocolate, and the fruit, the oxidized fruit from the tawny is just amazing. But this year, I mean, we can expect a few nice drams as well. Our Oxford rye whiskey, kind of like core range, it's a blend of several different casks, mainly American oak STR backbone, but with some interesting stuff on top. We can say some Pedro Jimenez, some super old Manzanilla sherry butt as well, to give us a bit of more saltiness as well. And later in the year, we might expect some nice stuff from Sauternes or from Ramondolo, sweet Italian wine. We'll see.
It's all going on at the Oxford Artisan Distillery. It must be very fun to work in that lab at the moment. Like,
oh, it is. I mean, it's just like samples everywhere. Some herbs drying as well to do some liqueurs. Yeah, we're quite creative over here. Yeah.
That's great. Just going to read out a few more tasting notes. There's still loads coming through. Real boing of maple syrup, dried dates, vanilla and peppery spice with pancakes. Richard Wingrove. Wow, that's an unusual palate. Sorry, there's a few more. Clive Hampton, liquidized fruitcake and almost cognac-like. My palate is getting a good working over. Peter Gilmore, I had a taste that I couldn't identify. Then the guy says floral, and that's the one. Malcolm Tucker, palate cereal notes with red fruit and plenty of black pepper, chili heat finish, sweet brioche. Green tea is green. This is one for the buying list. Again, remember, guys, that you will be getting your pour and sip discount from the member store, so please head over to the member store. Richard Wingrove saying exactly this. Good price in the member store. Or I'm just down the road from Oxford, so might have to pop up and do a tour and pick up some there.
Yeah, I mean, Oxford is so close to London. Anytime that anyone is around, please pop by. And I mean, if you haven't been here before, just continue coming because there's always something new going on. But what I just got lost with all the flavor notes that everyone is getting. But it's very good. I'm blushing now. There's like so complexity going on, such a wide range of flavors, because that's what we are about. We are trying to express diversity as well, and not only diversity in the grains, but diversity in flavors. Yeah. And a good attribute that gives a lot of quality to our process, to our liquid, and even before to our grains, is that as our grains are as natural as possible, and way before selection by human being. They're so tall; they're like 2 meters high. I'm quite short, coming from south of Europe, but they're so tall, and by being so tall means also that the roots are so deep as well. So they absorb way more minerals, nutrients, and you should try some bread baked with these grains as well.
That sounds great. I think you're going to share some for all us. Maybe we can buy some of the bread as well that you guys make as well in the Pour and Sip store, because that sounds really good. Chico, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about the Oxford Artisan Distillery. Thank you so much for coming on and talking us through this absolutely wonderful dram. I love it. I've got to say, it's just really unique, and I love unique whiskey, and I love people doing creative stuff within whiskey like this. So it's great to try this stuff and talk to you. So thank you very much for joining us. If you want to please do. If you don't and you need to go, head off.
Now I'll definitely wait and I'll see what everyone has to say about the other drams. No, it's
awesome.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
I will try to find some Ledaig in the shelf to join the next one.
Okay, cool. We're doing the 10, I think. So if you've got the 10, even better. Cheers. Right. Wow. What an evening this has been so far. And even though I'm by myself, I've got to say, I'm loving this. Absolutely brilliant guest so far. And now introducing the worst guest that we have of the night. It's Brendan. How are you?
What a wonderful introduction there. Thank you.
Absolutely not true. An absolute Pour and Sip favourite who's been asked back many times. So we're all aware of how great Brendan is. So thank you so much for joining us again. Brendan, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. So got a bit of a sore throat, ladies and gents. So I sound like a bit of I sound worse than usual. But
have you got a blocked nose as well, though?
No. It's literally just a sore throat that will not go away.
Oh, so wow, okay.
It sounds like the start of some sort of infomercial for some kind of hibiscus and tea remedy. But trust me,
until I found this stuff, and now
exactly, this too shall pass. Do you know what sorted my sore throat? Ledaig. No, that's completely illegal and shouldn't be said.
Well, actually, your Uncle Vanya said, "Oh no, not him again." So there you go.
I can't see the messages. It's just I can't see them, but it is good. I must say it was brilliant. First of all, it was brilliant listening to some great tastings from Glen Scotia and Oxford. I'm a huge fan of Oxford, which is amazing. Chico's incredible. Nick from Glen Scotia, my God, what a handsome man. You know, if I wasn't married, my word, I would go for him. But also in the background, everyone was giving him like huge praise for his surfboard. And I became aware that my background was quite plain. So I put my ironing board up.
I was to say, that didn't appear there out of nowhere. I thought it was some kind of haunted spirit or something.
Yeah, it's just some sort of surfing thing. You know, whatever Glen Scotia can do, we can do properly. So bring it on.
Glen Scotia surfboards, Ledaig,
ironing boards. Yeah, we don't need the fancy stuff, you know. We're just better.
Yeah, that's basic. So already, Saltai saying less surfboard, more iron board. I can relate to this.
Exactly. Ledaig, full of minerals. Hey, there we go.
Very good. So even though we've spoken to you before, but talk to us, for anyone who hasn't met you here before, Brendan, talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself in your job that you currently do.
Yeah, so as I cough away, my name is Brendan McCarran. I've been in the whiskey industry since it's almost 20 years actually. So in my past, I was a graduate once upon a time, believe it or not. I used to be young. I've been a designer of distilleries. I've been a blender. I've been a maltster. I've worked in maltings. Eventually, I became the youngest distillery manager in Oban's history. So the youngest, but it's not important. It honestly is not important, but the youngest in the history of one of the oldest distilleries in the world. But youngest. But it doesn't matter about the age. But I was the manager of Oban. Then I moved to Islay and I became the group manager of Islay. So I used to manage Lagavulin, Kalila, Port Ellen, maltings, not distillery. And then after that, I kind of jumped ship from being like a dyed-in-the-wool distiller and maltster. And then I jumped all the way to the other side of the whiskey-making process and became a whiskey maker. So I used to make Glenmorangie and Ardbeg for 8 years. So managing the stock, buying the casks, deciding what we were going to make next. And then 2 years ago, well, in a month's time, 2 years ago, I jumped ship again, much to the chagrin of my boss and whatnot, and to much controversy amongst the people I knew. But I joined Distell to be the master distiller. So basically, I'm in charge of whiskey from start to finish for Distell. So I'm responsible for all our whiskey production across Deanston, Ledaig, Tobermory, Bunnahabhain, our blends, our gins. I get to do everything that I love and none of the stuff that I hate. So it's kind of like the
dream.
Yeah, it's the dream.
That is, I still think that's such a great portfolio as well of distilleries.
This is why I joined. Yeah,
I was about to say that's four absolutely top distilleries. So wonderful stuff. So we're talking today about Ledaig.
Yeah, Ledaig. So
come on, talk us through it. The pronunciation.
It's the most mispronounced whiskey of all mispronounced whiskies, and that's okay. That's okay because when I interviewed for the job, well, that's a silly question. Of course, I didn't interview, but no. I when I went to Ledaig, when I went up to Tobermory, I was like, I've been drinking, which was true. I was like, I've been drinking. Trying to remember how I pronounce it now. Ledaig. I was like, I've been drinking Ledaig for years, and I say that a couple of times, and eventually there's a guy called Simon Proud. If you've never met Simon Proud, you need to meet him. So Simon Proud is the assistant manager at Tobermory. The guy's been there for forever and a day. You know, Tobermory was established in 1798. I have a feeling Simon started in 1800. He knows the distillery that well, but a great guy. I'm not making this up, but just I love working with him, and he brings so much to the distillery, and he he lives and breathes every moment that distillery does. But he took me aside within an hour of being on site and he went, can I have a word? And I'm his, you know, if you like, in rank style, not that I'm into that, but I'm his boss's boss. But he just sort of backed me into a corner and he went, lay chick. Like a chicken laying an egg, lay chick. And then away he departed. So I went, okay, that's noted. So believe me, I'm on Reddit, I'm on social media telling people it's pronounced lay chick. And they respond, no, it isn't. But I'm like, yes, it is. Simon Proud said, therefore, this is how you say it. He's a Mullock. He's from Mull. He's never been off the island, really. He knows how it's pronounced.
Lay chick. Chicken, lay egg. I've been saying Ledaig, thinking I was really smart for years. So going, no, it's not Ledaig, it's Ledaig. But, you know, I've been wrong as well. And as I say, so we have decided it's Ledaig or Ledaig. I was told the latter by random jeweler on the Tobermory High Street. So, yes, Ledaig.
Yeah, Ledaig.
And Ian Turner, Ledaig Rioja cask finish was the first bottle I bought from Pour and Sip. Absolutely love it. And Steve Coleman Williams is saying that he has the same ironing board as you, Brendan. Yes.
Well done on the same ironing board. And thank you for buying the Rioja cask. It is incredible.
I've got a bottle of that actually on the shelf there, which, funnily enough, next to a 13-year-old Amontillado cask finish.
Ah, nice.
Which is really nice. I hadn't seen.
When I started 2 years ago, this one, the Sinclair series, as we call it, or the Rioja cask, it was meant to be a one-off. So it was created before I joined. You know, it was BB before Brendan. But it was such a good whiskey, in my opinion. When I was drinking it, I was going, this stuff is incredible. When's the next batch? I can't wait to be involved. And they went, no, it's a one-off. We'll never do it again. And I was like, no. This cannot be a one-off. So it's now a permanent part of the Ledaig family.
I remember it being a super, super popular one for us at Pour and Sip. I think everyone loved that one. But let's discuss a bit about Ledaig and talk us through it, and, you know, the distillery of Tobermory itself and what we're trying as well. What's the house?
Yeah. So hopefully everyone's got their dram in their hands. If you've got your dram in your hands, get your nose in it, start drinking it. Do not wait, for the love of God. Get in there. But basically, it's a intensely smoky, funky, kind of farmyardy, mucky, salty dram, which, if you wrote down all the tasting notes for it on a bit of paper and offered it to anyone, they'd say, I'm not drinking that. But if you pour it into a glass, and you'll notice I'm not using a Glencairn or a nosing glass tonight. I'm just using a lovely tumbler for drinking it. But if you wrote down all those notes on a bit of paper, you'd probably go, no, I'm not going to drink that. That sounds weird. But just pour it into a glass and give it to people. You're not going to get everyone, but you're only going to get half the room. But that half of the room you get are just going to go, wow. Imagine like going back in time to, it's the Victorian times. There's a nice link to Glen Scotia as well. But back in Victorian times, there's a factory that's making some kind of Victorian stuff. Who knows what they made then? Like oil and mud were the main commodities, let's say. And this Victorian factory catches fire. It starts to burn down. And the only way you have a chance of putting the fire out is by using seawater. That's basically, in my head, that's what Ledaig is. Ledaig is just this crazy, smoky, furnacey, woody, muddy, mucky whiskey that's so saline and briny and iodine. And it's not for everyone, but if you love it, you really, really, really get hooked in. So after that, if you're nosing it, you should get from Ledaig 10. It's 10 years in bourbon casks. First fills, second fills, refills. That balance will change, but the main things are just this incredibly smoky and salty and mucky spirit. 10 years in bourbon casks, some first, some second, some refill, and we'll balance off the nature to just give you this salty, sweet, smoky, incredible dram. And it's from the Isle of Mull. There's only one distillery on the Isle of Mull, which is the Tobermory Distillery. It's one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. everyone gets into an argument about who is the oldest distillery. And let me tell you, Tobermory is definitely the oldest. No, it's not. Everyone gets in this fight. And frankly, I have given up the will to live listening to every single distillery from the 1700s claiming they are the oldest one. Who cares? Who cares? But we do know Tobermory was established in 1798, this tiny little distillery on the Isle of Mull. And today, some 200 and whatever years into the future, is still a tiny distillery on the Isle of Mull. Over its history, it's been kind of checkered and complicated, but it's made smoky whiskies called Ledaig, and it's made unpeated whiskies called Tobermory. When I joined 2 years ago, we were basically splitting it 50-50. Half the year, it would use unpeated malt to make Tobermory. Half the year, it'd make super peaty, smoky whiskey called Ledaig. My big change when I was only a few months in the job was, let's shift the balance here. I want to make Tobermory, and I want to make Tobermory precise and exact and perfect, and really importantly, very old. I think Tobermory just comes to life when it's older. But Ledaig, I was like, all we need to do is make more. Let's make more Ledaig. Let's put it into the strongest casks we think that are too strong for whiskey, but frankly, nothing is too strong for Ledaig. Let's make more 10. Let's make more 18, which is an award winner. I won't go any further than that. But let's make more Sinclair series. But also especially the more that I work with Ledaig, the more I realise red wine, and especially not just red table wines, but Barolo is a big thing for me right now. Malbecs, Riojas, but especially also red fortified wines. So big sherries, Marsala casks, possibly like Chico was talking about, what was it, Purple Amontillado, or what was it? Purple Moscatel, which to me sounds like a euphemism or a wonderful name for a certain movie you wouldn't look at on a works computer. But anyways, all these kind of big, jammy, sticky, intense wines, that's what I want to do with Ledaig, and we are super ambitious on this whiskey this year.
So what's driving you towards focusing more like on Ledaig instead of Tobermory? Is that because just you feel like you can get more out of it? You could just go different places with it. What is that?
It's a couple of things. So basically, I don't, and my team don't, and I would also say we're not like sentient beings who are super experts and the public don't know, but I think it would become clear that Tobermory isn't ready young. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like Glenmorangie or a few other whiskies I could talk about. They just need time to kind of get organised, get themselves together and get ready and mature. Maturation, just like humans, certain humans mature quicker than others, and it just needs time. Yeah, I was a very, very, very late starter. My wife would say you still are, but certain things take time, and Tobermory just takes time. And the other thing I would say is when we make Tobermory, we drop the amount of batches at the distillery in the week. We reduce the amount of production, and we focus more. And we almost, in a good way, we almost have to concentrate more and fight more to make Tobermory right. And it's going to take a longer time to come out. So to me, everything about Tobermory says, take your time, make less, make it longer, But Ledaig, that distillery in the bay on the Isle of Mull in Tobermory is screaming out to make smoky whiskey. It just screams out. When we put smoky, heavily peated malt into that distillery, the distillery sounds better. It smells better. It runs better. It's like a wound watch, It just everything starts to happen when it should. So part of it is listening to our distillery. And okay, I admit I'm over romanticizing here. The other part of it is Tobermory is loved and people think it's spectacular, and we are improving the quality of it basically every single day that we're there. But there's no denying the demand right now, the pull from people drinking whiskey is for Ledaig. So therefore, there's also a slightly more, this just makes sense.
Sales
Let's make it Ledaig.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit more that's just me being a selfish asshole. And I love smoky whiskey. And I used to make Ardbegs. I used to get loads of Ardbeg into my house. And now I'm going, what's going to fill my smoky shelf in my house? And it's Ledaig.
I find it's like the smoke from Ledaig, like you're saying. I always get this like really meaty kind of smoke, like this kind of burnt barbecue kind of note that always comes through for me when I'm trying Ledaig. And I've not gone into this one just yet because I still really need to read out a hell of a lot of tasting notes that are coming through.
Well, do you? Just drink the whiskey first. Don't worry about them. Drink your whiskey. Prioritize yourself.
Well, this is, in fairness, if there's any whiskey that's going to be helping this cold come through, this is absolutely the one. I don't need anything subtle here. So slander everybody. Cheers. Yeah. So I mean, as well, there's a herbal note as well that's there. It's a salty kind of nutty kind of note as well. But yeah, the smoke is really, really overpowering. But there's a sweetness to the smoke as well on the nose, and it's wonderful, I have to say. But I am going to take a sip now to slander everyone, and Brenton can tell us his tasting notes from the palate whilst I sip.
Cheers. So, yeah, I just think it is. So when you talk about the competition, you always sound like you're being critical, and I'm not. The south coast of Ireland, they call Dalton Cross, the big three, Lafroy, Lagavulin, and Ardbeg. I love those whiskies, and I drink them all the time. But to me, they are a big hit of smoke up front, and then there's like an acidity, a brightness, almost like lime juice or lemon, some kind of acidity that cuts through the smoke, and I love it, okay? And even though I've said that in a super positive way, people will still assume I'm being critical. But what I love about Ledaig is it has the same initial kind of grab of smoke. It's that same big hit of phenolics, wood smoke, like a wood fire burning on a beach, a storm, saltiness, brininess, seaweed. It has that same hit. But underneath it, I would say Ledaig is kind of mucky. You know, it's mucky. It's like there's mud, there's petrichor, there's this crazy earthy minerality, but there's also, I don't know, there's also something slightly herbal and perfumed, but and also something a wee bit more, for want of a better word, industrial. You know, there's this kind of naphtha, kerosene, petrol, diesel that just gives it this crazy similarity, but individuality to the whiskey as well. And with the current, you know, crisis of fuel costs, it's almost a bargain to drink as well, I would say.
That's to say, you can fill your car with it as well if you would like. Real Boinga, lovely peaty opening with butterscotch, tobacco and pepper on the nose, smoky cherry, vanilla custard with a spicy aura and smoky vanilla finish. Steve Coleman Williams, on the pronunciation story, we were told there was more Saxon in Mull language history than most of Scotland. Hence the confusion. It stretches to village, town names, etc. too.
Yeah, probably. Probably, yeah. And I am not an expert in Saxons. I'm a huge Alan Partridge fan, so I could talk about Saxondale, Steve Coogan fan, but who knows?
Jim Glancy was saying he's got a bottle of the 18-year-old, and although love both, prefer this 10-year-old. Do younger expressions suit peated malts better than 18-year-olds? What do you think?
So, yeah, let me answer this in two different ways. So, in general terms, as a whiskey maker, yeah, smoky whiskey is better younger. When you're a whiskey maker, smoky whiskey is better younger, because the primary reason for making smoky whiskey is for it to be smoky. So the longer a whiskey is in the cask, the less smoky it's going to become. And at the same time, this is always hard because I can see myself, but as the smoke goes down, at the same time, the fruitiness and the other flavors go up in the cask. So as a rule of thumb, I can't pronounce my THs, but as a rule of thumb, yeah, if you try to make a smoky whiskey, make it young. So you're absolutely right. However, to add complication and be such a politician to not answer your answer, it depends on you. So why do you prefer the 10 over the 18? You just do. Your palate likes it. The 18 has some sherry in it. The 10 is 100% bourbon, so maybe you don't like the sticky, sweet, slightly bacony flavour of the sherry, or maybe you don't like the fact that the smokiness has stepped down a bit. So individually, comparing the Ledaig 18 to the Ledaig 10, who knows? It could be you. But as a general thing, yeah, if you're a smoky whiskey drinker, drink the younger stuff first, then build your way up to the older stuff, because you'll actually notice the smoky levels either become more discreet or they drop away a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete Barrett, ideally suited for relaxing evenings. What more does one want? Simon, after the last 2 drams, it's quite subtle, but second and third sip, it's coming to life a bit more. There you go. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're just warming up. What
yeah.
I say is skull the next one. No. That's just a joy. Don't forget. I mean, like genuinely, this is a pretty awesome lineup. If I do say so myself, Glen Scotia is doing some really incredible stuff, but don't think of it as some light, easy passerby whiskey. Like Campbelltown whiskies are, they have a depth and a muckiness, a depth that creates something really special. And then Oxford, I'm a huge fan of Oxford, and that's a rye whiskey. So rye whiskies are like beyond spicy. American rye whiskies are too much for me. I just don't like them. I think Oxford rye is still really intense, but it's finally came into the. I'm sort of trying to make my hand appear on the screen here. It's just right at my limit. Yeah. So we're drinking big whiskies. So it's okay to think it's subtle, but but it's not.
That's exactly it. And I mean, it's again, our palates are all very different. You need different places at different times. Seagull and Williams, this really is a class dram. Love it, and an excellent price point. I think that's what everyone said as well about the Rioja Sinclair series as well, was like the price point is kind of crazy as well. And it's the same with this one as well. It's just a really good valued 10-year-old that you're going to get.
And to that, I say to all the ladies and gentlemen tuning in, you should be ashamed of yourselves. You know, I have a child who eats like the amount of free children every day, you know, and I have a car that I have to run and I need to work. So you should be tipping me for the whiskies that I create, and you pay such.
You should have carried on at Ardbeg then, because that wouldn't have been such an issue. Ali C, bonfire smoke with a chunk of peat, vanilla and creme caramel. Then the smoke comes back to finish you off. Excellent. Green saying this is the nicest Ledaig he's had. Not been a favourite of previous ones, but it's a bit all over the place in the best possible way. So there you go. Jeff's saying it could well be the oldest distillery on the Isle of Mull.
I love that. I love that.
Malcolm Tucker, palate, smoke, black pepper, burnt wood, salinity, more smoke at the end. Pat Cowling, I hate this pour and sip selection because I want a bottle of all 3. Clive Hampton, as you were saying, Brendan, as well, we've been spoiled tonight. I think we can have a tasting session dedicated to each one, as they've all been superb for me. Richard Wingrove, can't decide between this and the Rioja cast. Might have to buy some more of each for a proper comparison. Ian Turner, the 10-year-old doesn't disappoint. Superb. Barry Cullen, this is a lovely dram. Will there ever be a second whiskey in the Sinclair series?
So, great question. It's kind of my fault. The Sinclair series was maybe a series, but I landed as the first one was launched, and it was too bloody good. So, I can't answer. I would say no, but don't quote me on that. So basically, the Rioja cask Sinclair series will become, let's call it the Sinclair edition or something like that, because I do not want to give up this whiskey. It's too fantastic. It's too amazing. I'm not letting it go. So it's going to be a permanent member of the family. Now, whether it's called a part of the Sinclair series or it's something else, what I can assure you is I am doing crazy amounts of experimentation with red wine and fortified red wine. So think Barolo, Malbec, Marsala, AN, other. So whether it comes out as a Sinclair series or as in another guise, we're going to do lots of cool, funky experimentations with Ledaig.
It's interesting, the ones that fit as well to red wine, like particularly like finishing like Long Row. I feel like they've done so much experimentation, like Malbecs, Barolos, and it works so well. Pinot Noirs with these kind of red wines. It's really interesting to see which type of kind of whiskey does really work with red wine like that.
Yeah. And do you know what? Like, usually there's some really obvious things that smoky whiskies go great with this, or non-peated whiskies go great with this, or whiskies that are 12-year-old go great with this. Red wine's like a really inconsistent cask to work with, in my opinion. But with Ledaig, in the 2 years I've been here, like it just, the two of them just tend to like lock into each other and do some really amazing things, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Your Uncle Vanya asking a question I wouldn't know about it, but is there any Ledaig in any of the black bottle expressions or incoming ones? Does anyone know?
Yes, there are. Yes, there is. Yep. So black bottle is primarily Islay for its smoke. But yeah, we will use Ledaig from time to time. Interestingly, there's a black bottle available right now. I don't know if it's available at Master Malt right now. Hopefully it is, called Smoke and Dagger. And for that one, we just wanted to like up and twist and increase the smoke every time. So what we did is we took some of the whiskey, and it was a grain whiskey, and we matured it in ex-Ledaig casks. So just gave it an extra bit of Ledaig smoke, but we also put plenty of Ledaig in there as well. So check out Smoke and Dagger, which is part of the Black Bottle Alchemy series, and also check out the Black Bottle Alchemy Andean Oak as well, which is a tiny but almost unnoticeable amount of Ledaig. Lots of Tobermory in it.
Okay. We've had a black bottle on here. I think just the standard on here before. I can't remember who presented it.
Yeah, Craig. It was Craig.
Yeah, absolutely. Clive Hampton, I still have the empty bottle of the Sinclair dram we had last year. I still occasionally sniff it as it's still going strong. There you go.
Well, you know what I'd say there. Buy another. Your engine filled up. Come on.
Your Uncle Vanya, hashtag rule of thumb with an F. Go for it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And lastly, your Uncle Vanya saying, "Oh, Madeira, please."
Yeah, working on it. It's doing some very special things. There was like a limited release in 2020, Ledaig Marsala, and it basically smelled like, and you know Bertie Bassett, the character from All Sorts. Yeah. Imagine Bertie Bassett was involved in some sort of industrial accident where he got covered in oil and caught fire. That's what it smelled and tasted like. It was the most incredible firmness of licorice. And I've been chasing that high ever since.
Okay. Well, there you go. Your dream may come true there, your Uncle Vanya. Well, lastly then, like cocktail-wise, we spoke about old fashions. You know, would this go with anything? Do you know?
So, you know, like, as everyone knows, that's very arrogant. As anyone who knows me knows, I love an old-fashioned. Deanston, which is our waxy single malt from the Highlands of Scotland. It makes the best old-fashioned because it's waxy and fruity and citrusy. I know people love them, but I don't like I just don't like a smoky old-fashioned. However, it makes the most phenomenal daiquiri. Ledaig 10 daiquiri is game-changing. And then the other one, which you're going to go, what is he talking about? But trust me, it's another reason not to drink vodka, of which I have 1,000 reasons. But use Ledaig 10 to make a Bloody Mary. Next time you're fancying a Bloody Mary, Ledaig 10, straight substitute for the vodka, which you then take the vodka and pour it in, into a sack and throw it up into there. But use Ledaig 10 and spice it up, and you're gonna love it.
I mean, the daiquiri sounds amazing. You'd have to convince me to like a Bloody Mary, regardless of if it had whiskey in it, because it just
love them.
No, thank you. I can imagine this making something like a good penicillin or something like that. Maybe that's a good.
Yeah, it makes an amazing penicillin, of course, but you then need. I would say Black Bottle makes the best penicillin because it's everything all in one. But try a daiquiri, simple syrup, lime juice, Ledaig. You can't mess it up. You cannot mess it up.
Steve Colvin Williams is saying smoky old fashioned for the win. So there you go. He's disagreeing with you.
And that's great. That's great. This is why sometimes like, when you talk about the whiskies that you make or the things that you like, it sounds like you're telling people these are the rules. and you must follow my rules. And it's not that. It's just me personally. Okay, I'm lucky enough. I'm really lucky. I get to make whiskey for a living. But don't forget, before I made whiskey, I was a whiskey drinker and a cocktail drinker. And this is the cocktail drinking, whiskey drinking person talking when I say I just don't like smoky old fashions. But it's not like this is a rule, and I do decree no one may ever make an old fashioned out of Ledaig. If you love that, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I agree as well. I like an old fashioned. I'd try something else as a smoky, but I mean, there's no reason why you can't have a smoky old fashioned. So Steve Coleman Williams, order all the smoky old fashions you want, and please put this Ledaig in your smoky old fashions. I'm sure it will work. Right. So thank you very much, Brendan. I've just realised that I actually have to present 2 other drams that we're trying tonight. So I'm just going to say bye to Brendan very briefly.
Oh, well, I will say then, unfortunately, I'm going to say good night now. So.
Good night, Brendan. Thank you very much for joining us again. And we hope to have you on at some stage in the future.
Anytime. Let me know.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Mate. Bye. Right, yeah. It's been such an amazing guest tonight that I completely forgot. But I don't want to forget because we do have 2 other drams to really quickly try. Just to let you know, there's a lot of drinking. So 5 drams. If you can't, if you don't want to drink them, please just save one of these till later. It's really not the end of the world. You can even have it tomorrow. So please do not worry about that. The first one I'm talking about is the Yellowstone. This is a select bourbon. These guys were originally founded in the late 1800s by J.B. Dant, and the distillery's changed hands many times over the years. And in 2010, Paul and Steve Bean, who were descendants of the Dant family, founded the Limestone Branch Distillery. And this is the select bourbon, and it's from the Yellowstone range, which they have. And it's made of a mash bill of 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. And it's not just named after Yellowstone as in the national park, but all the proceeds and some portion of the proceeds are donated to the National Parks Conservation Association. So that's pretty cool, and also a mouthful as well for me. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of this in, just to have a little nose of it. So again, guys, don't have to drink this. Yeah, I mean, it is bourbon for sure. Lots of toasted oak, candied cherry maybe as well. A lovely grain sweetness there as well. Really kind of nice soft nose. Yeah, really nice. The 75% corn comes through. It's really sweet. I'd say it's quite a nice, easy drinking bourbon. And after having 3 drams, I think, beforehand tonight, which have been really kind of, like Brendan was saying, not subtle. This one goes down really nicely. So that's the Yellowstone Select Bourbon. And lastly, we have the Glasgow 1770. And I'm just going to talk very briefly about this one as well. Now, Glasgow 1770 is heavily inspired by one of Glasgow's original distilleries at Dundas Hill in 1770, obviously, where during the Depression and the Prohibition era, hundreds of distilleries in the city were forced to close until 2012, where 3 businessmen set up a plan to bring back distilling to the city of Glasgow for the first time in over a century. So the Glasgow 1770 is the first distillery in Glasgow since the Prohibition era. And this release we are drinking tonight is the Smoky Spirit, which was initially matured in American white oak barrels and then finished in cognac barriques. So those is a brief little bit of info about those 2 whiskies. And yeah, please let us know in the comments what you think of those ones. So I'm just going to really quickly invite back our guests who have stayed. I see Nick has come back as well, and I've got Chico here as well. Hey guys, how are you? Kids asleep, Nick?
Just about. I can hear him running around upstairs, but we'll ignore that and pretend they're asleep.
Just okay. Right. Brendan was obsessed with your surfboard. Actually, the surfboard became a real topic of discussion tonight.
Yeah, I actually bought that on the way home from a gentleman on the other side of Edinburgh.
Oh, really?
Picked that one up. Good old Facebook Marketplace. It's amazing what you find. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for joining us again, guys. It's been a really wonderful evening. What are you guys drinking at the moment? What's the kind of thing that if you go home after a day of work, you're pouring for yourself? What about you, Chico?
Well, I couldn't find any Ledaig or Glen Scotia in the shelf, so
On that shelf?
No, on that shelf. I mean, usually, boys like that will go very, very fast. So I'm drinking some malted rye from Finland, from Kiro.
We love those guys here. What was the recent one we tried? It was absolutely mental. And I can't remember what it was now, but I think it was their most recent release. I can't remember what it was, but it was just mental, but in just such a good way. It was pizza
as well.
It was incredible.
Yeah, no, huge fan as well, and it's gorgeous. But my top pick, is probably one of my favorite drinks for this weather is the dairy cream. Oh, it's so good.
Oh my god,
so good. It's
you can't drink too much of that though. You can't drink.
No, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
That is dangerous stuff. What about yourself, Nick?
Well, I just finished a bottle of Ledaig, actually. I was lucky enough to go over to Tobermory and have a bit of an explore of Mull, so I've just finished mine. Albeit I'm actually still drinking out of my Ledaig glass, if you can see.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, right on brand.
Yeah, absolutely. That. I'm being a bit of a Loch Lomond Group kind of loyalist, I guess. And then what I'm really on at the moment is our festival edition from last year. That was an 8-year-old heavily peated PX cask finish number we did. And that's pretty much all gone, but we've got our next festival edition coming out in a couple of months' time, which is quite exciting.
What one's that again? I can't remember if you told them.
The one that's coming out?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this group can keep it to yourselves.
NDA, guys. NDAs, we love pour and sip NDA.
Yeah, it's yeah. So that's what it is, and again, it'll be a peated number, probably slightly lighter peated for this one, with a very, very interesting finish on it. So I had a little try of it, albeit pre-vatting. A little try of it yesterday for the first time, and it's a bit special. So yeah, being a bit of a brand loyalist, I'm afraid I should probably branch out a bit, but there we are.
Everyone does the same thing pretty much, except Chico with his Finnish rye whiskey. Guys, also. The question, and our guests won't be offended, and particularly Brendan, who's not here, but we like to ask everyone at the end of the night which their favourite dram has been of the evening. So, guys, please let us know in the comments which one you have enjoyed the most tonight. I think it'll be a really interesting one tonight because they've all been such kind of unique drams as well, not similar as usual. So it will be really interesting to hear what you all think. Richard Wingrove, another great bunch of guests tonight. Ali C, Brendan plus Paul from Few for a future pour and sip would be excellent. Pat Cowling is saying the Glasgow 1770 has a finish of marijuana. Have you ever come across that before? In a finish of a whiskey?
That's a new tasting note for me, definitely.
Yeah, I usually get that in when we distill beer. But that's not really a whiskey because there's some hops there, but there's definitely some dank coming over.
Yeah, there you go. Pat Cowling, joint first place for all three tonight. There you go. Neil Bolton of all three thought Ledaig. I don't even need to worry about pronouncing it right anymore because Brendan's gone and I still am thinking about it in my head when I say it. But for me, the Oxford takes the win. Simon Glen Scotia tonight for me, but tonight's three have been real big hitters flavour-wise. Your Uncle Vanya, we did the Smoky Kiro, which was amazing. It was really, I remember being really blown away by it. Ali C, Glen Scotia, followed by the Ledaig, and for me tonight, Steve Coleman Williams. It's a real tough one. Love Ledaig so much, but I have a bottle upstairs. I think the Oxford wins, if nothing else, on novelty and newness. Stuart Pilling, question for Nick. One of the best drams I've ever had is a Glen Scotia 17-year-old Tawny Port cask. Is there anything else similar in the pipeline?
Oh, we've got it depends kind of how deep your pockets are. We're about to release a global travel retail, so that's airports, 22-year-old with a Tawny Port finish on it as well, which again, I was lucky enough to try this week. And, it's definitely not one for pocket money, but it was quite special. I'm not going to lie. 22 years on it. It was just a remarkable liquid. I think that's it's not for the faint of heart. I think that's going to be something like 350 to 400 pounds per bottle, and we're only releasing, I think, about 1,000 of them a year. It's a limited annual release. But yeah, as soon as those kind of go out, I'm finding out which airports we've sold them to, and I'm going and buying one. I'll just have to sip it very, very slowly.
There you go, Stuart. So, I mean, maybe one for you if someone's going abroad and picking
Yeah,
up
I've got a birthday coming up.
or something like that. Richard Wingrove, hard choice tonight. We'll go for the Oxford for the flavour explosion. Green tea is green. Oxford takes it. I think a real surprise. Do you like to hear that, Chico? Like a surprise?
Oh,
Like,
you can see my face is quite red right now.
Paul Murray, Oxford number 1, easily number 2. Glasgow. Okay. The Table Football Club. Enjoyed the show, guys. Thank you. And best wishes to all. Malcolm Tucker. My choice this month is Glen Scotia, then Ledaig. Simon, where can we get these Glen Scotia Festival editions?
The Glen Scotia Festival editions. Master of Malt.
Yeah.
Number 1, I'm fairly sure you always get a good chunky allocation.
They're not like the Springbank Festival editions, essentially, in which you're going to have to go to the shop, and these are much bigger releases that you're going to get.
Yeah, this is our kind of our global release. It's always to sort of bring a taste, forgive the pun, a taste of the festival to everybody around the world, if you like. But yeah, it sort of goes quick. But you can probably you can get hold of a bottle. I say our next one will be released around, I want to say early April time.
Okay.
So yeah.
There you go. Keep your eyes peeled, guys. Malcolm Tucker, the Glen Scotia 2002 festival release didn't last long in this house. Very nice. Your Uncle Banya, Oxford, definite winner, especially since I'm on the Scotia weekly. So there you go. This is,
nice.
Glen Scotia for me, DBH, but Oxford very close. Real Bonga Ledaig for me. Should have been in Glen Scotia, best dram of the night. Paul Burrow, I can't decide tonight. They were all great, stunning. Neil Bolton is asking if ZZ Top just walked past Chico in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and our distillery is in top. There you go.
Just in the background there. Pat Cowling, I hated the Smoky Kiro. There you go. I've always said, and I said at the time, that I love drams that people hate as well, because I love the divisiveness. Sometimes when you get something that's really, really divisive like that. David Marion, all of them were good tonight. The Glen Scotia was probably our favourite colleague, closely followed by the Oxford Artisan. There are just so many coming in here. Saltire, love the Oxford, amazing Roma, really enjoyed the Glen Scotia. We'll be checking out the deals on both. And Simon saying, thank you, Nick, for your response into his question. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us all tonight. 3 wonderful guests. And I think we will be joining you next month for a St. Patrick's Day special. So expect some Irish whiskies and some Paddy's Day festivities. So yeah, we'll see you on the next one, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers all. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very